Late afternoon light bleeds into a suburban loft, casting jagged shadows. Mark, 32, is plating a dinner he spent 2 hours preparing. Across the table, 27-year-old Elena is tracing the rim of her wine glass. She tells him they are settling into a beautiful, expensive grave. With their wedding 4 months away, she demands an open arrangement, a temporary trial to get the what-ifs out of her system. The request leaves Mark with a cold stone in his gut. He doesn't want to be the controlling fiancé. He wants her to choose him without feeling trapped, so he agrees to the arrangement, suppressing his own instincts to preserve the relationship. Over the next 3 months, their lives move in opposite directions. While Elena spends her Friday nights exploring new connections, Mark retreats into the silence of their home. He spends his nights in the gym or the library, quietly reinventing himself while Elena is away. By trying to preemptively cure her fear of missing out, Elena successfully hollowed out the connection they already had. The what-if didn't protect the marriage. It created an emotional chasm that ensured its decline. 3 months in, the atmosphere in the loft turns clinical. Elena becomes fidgety and pale, her eyes glued to her phone. One Tuesday, Mark finds her sobbing in the bathroom, the air heavy with the scent of antiseptic. Elena reveals a diagnosis: herpes type 2. She immediately attempts to frame it as a manageable fluke, a one-time mistake with a guy from her gym. She insists they can work through it, citing medical statistics to minimize the impact of the infection. Mark realizes that Elena has gambled their collective physical health on a gym encounter. To satisfy a hypothetical curiosity, she introduced a permanent virus into the bed they were supposed to share for life. Mark remains terrifyingly calm. He tells her he's going to the clinic, and if he's clear, he's gone. When the test comes back negative, he packs 2 suitcases, moves into a downtown apartment, and cancels every wedding vendor, from the caterer to the florist. Introducing external physical risk into a partnership shatters the baseline of safety. Once that boundary is breached for a stranger, the emotional and physical security required for a marriage is permanently compromised. Mark ghosts the relationship entirely. He spends the next 6 months processing the fallout in total silence, eventually joining a hiking group to clear his head. On those trails, he meets Sarah. She is steady and honest, a pediatric nurse who doesn't view commitment as a constraint. For the first time in years, Mark isn't walking on eggshells. He is with someone who chose him without needing a trial run with others. Elena, however, hasn't moved on. She has spent those same 6 months spinning a narrative to their mutual friends and family, framing herself as a victim of a medical fluke who was cruelly abandoned by her fiancé. This narrative leads to an ambush. Mark arrives at what he thinks is a cousin's birthday dinner, only to find Elena at the head of the table. His mother and friend Dave pressure him, framing his departure as abandoning a sick woman. Mark finds himself under the weight of a support system that values social optics over his personal safety. They are asking him to trade his happiness for the convenience of a secret they can all keep. Mark refuses the role of the guilty party. He tells the table that Elena traded their life for a stranger, asserts that he is finally happy, and walks out to return to his life with Sarah. 2 weeks later, Elena shows up at Mark's office, desperate and polished. Her parents are threatening to cut her off unless she likes things with Mark. Elena presents her primary leverage, an undetectable viral load. She argues that because the medical reality is suppressed, the problem has disappeared. But this ignores the fractured trust that cannot be managed with a pill. Mark tells her the virus isn't the point anymore. The tragedy is that Elena only realized she wanted him once he was gone. Sarah, by contrast, didn't need to lose him to know he was her first choice. When her logical arguments fail, Elena's mask slips. She resorts to insults, calling Sarah boring, and predicting that Mark will eventually regret leaving what they had. She is no longer a grieving partner. She is a gambler angry at the dealer. Trust cannot be restored through medical data when the fundamental loyalty of the partnership has been traded away. No amount of suppression therapy can repair a foundation that was intentionally dismantled. 1 year later, Mark and Sarah stand on a mountain summit at sunrise. Their relationship is defined by a shared path, not endless negotiations. Back in the city, Elena sits at her parents' kitchen island, staring at Mark's social media photos. The friends who once cheered for Elena's liberated lifestyle have drifted away, tired of the ongoing drama. Her pursuit of freedom has left her socially and emotionally isolated. Elena makes one final reach. While Mark is out for drinks with Dave, she hijacks Dave's phone to bypass Mark's block and force him to listen to her. She accuses Mark of faking his new life, claiming he isn't a hiker and is only trying to spite her. Mark responds that the virus was simply the receipt for her choices, an invitation for me to leave that he finally accepted. By hijacking a friend's phone to blame Mark for her own isolation, Elena proves she is still unwilling to look at her own actions. She remains the only person left in a room filled with her own excuses. Mark and Sarah move into a fixer-upper on the edge of the woods. They sit on the steps together watching the sunset without any what-ifs or hidden agendas. Elena eventually enters a new relationship, but it is defined by the precedent she set for herself. She spends her nights checking her new partner's phone, crippled by the fear that he is exploring, just as she once did. The open door Elena demanded for her own liberation has become a source of chronic anxiety. She is now trapped by the very concept of options she once championed. Lasting peace in a partnership isn't found in keeping your options open. It's built in the moments where two people decide the room is finally full enough to close the door and stay inside.